everybody, I'm Chantal Lascaris and welcome to my kitchen. We're going to be doing a 15-minute gourmet dish today, and it's called a tomato and white bean tartlet with salsa verde. So to start off with, we're going to make a white bean puree. I've got my stick blender, which is an essential item in any kitchen. I've got our white beans, which we're going to put in. I have drained them. We don't need the sauce that's in there. Sorry, here I am, I'm back. We're going to put the white beans into our container that we're going to use to make the puree. A little bit of extra sauce doesn't really matter, but we just don't want all of it because it does make it quite heavy. We've got our white beans. We've got some basil leaves that we're going to put in. Oh, there's quite a lot of them, it's quite nice. We might have to do this in 2 stages. We've got some lemon juice that we're going to pour in there. And we've got some olive oil. This we're going to give a lovely good blend. It's going to give it a lovely green color, which is going to be delicious with our tartlet. So here we go. We're going to give it a nice whiz. Give it a bit of a stir around. Okay, so we've blended our white beans. You can see, as I said, it was going to give you that lovely green color. Just want to take some of it off here. We don't want it to go to waste. There we go. And just give it another stir. If you look at the consistency that we're trying to create, if you think of hummus, that's pretty much the sort of consistency that you're trying to get. If you have a look there, I would say that would be a hummus consistency. So we're going to leave this to the side, and then we're actually going to start with our pastry. I'm now going to make the pastry base. I've lightly floured my surface, and I've actually laid 2 rolls of pastry, one on top of the other. This is because if you do want to eat it by hand, your pastry will be firm enough that your filling doesn't fall through. Also, I like to use ready-made pastry. If you want to be fancy, you can make it yourself, but then of course it doesn't fit into the 15 minutes that we want to achieve here. So puff pastry for me is just as good as the real thing. What we're going to do is, I've just rolled it out. No need to use a rolling pin and spread it out. The thickness that it comes in is absolutely perfect. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it in half lengthways like that. And we want to make 6 portions, so I'm just going to cut it into thirds. Nice and easy like that. Oops, a daisy, there we go. It's already got a mind of its own. And another piece like that. There we go. What we're going to do now is we're just going to take a fork and we're just going to close the edges to make sure that they're joined nicely together. There we go, just like so. This is so that they don't actually open, because we've put 2 pieces together. You don't want it to actually sort of separate while it's cooking. We're going to then brush it with some olive oil, just to give it that nice golden color. And then we will put it into our baking tray. I've again used some tin foil, because I find that that saves my baking sheets, because every time you cook, no matter how well you grease it, there's always going to be some residue, and it does tend to damage your baking sheets. So this way, with the tin foil, you do tend to extend the life of your baking sheet. You can just throw away the tin foil once you're done, and your baking sheet is as good as new. So there we go. We're just going to finish this off. I'm doing it at a bit of an angle here. I'm sure you can see that. And then we're going to brush it with some, as I said, with some olive oil, and we're ready to go. So our pastry's been cooking in the oven, and it's time to come out. I'll show you now that it actually puffs up quite a lot. You don't want it perfectly brown, because remember, we are going to put it into the grill, so that will give it its last final brownness, or goldenness, shall we say. But you do want the pastry to have puffed up a little bit, because we've got 2 layers, which means that the bottom layer has now pushed through to the top layer, and we know that it's cooked. So let's have a look and you'll see what I mean. As you can see, it's starting to go lovely and brown and nice and puffy, bearing in mind now that as we take it out of the oven, the puffiness will drop a little bit, and we've got time then to put our balance of the ingredients on top. Give that a close, and now we're ready to do the balance. We're going to start off with our bean puree. That was the first thing that we made. We're going to just sort of put a smear of that around the base of the tartlets. Then we're going to do just a small smear of salsa verde, and we'll top it off with the tomatoes. That all goes under the grill, and we get that nice brown and blackened, slightly blackened tomato, and it's going to be delicious. So for each one, just sort of put a piece in the middle. It is going to be a little bit hot, so just be careful of the edges of your baking sheet that you don't burn yourself. It's one of the hazards of being a cook at home, is that you do tend to have a few little burns every now and again. You've got to always keep your wits about you when you come to cooking. Who would have thought? There we go, a nice sort of healthy dollop onto each one. There you go. I like to put it close to the edges because this is the part that you're going to see, and it's quite nice to have the light green contrasting with the darker green, and then all juxtaposed with the beautiful orange, or the redness, should we say, of the tomato, depending on the tomatoes that you're using. There we go. As you can see, it's already starting to drop, which is what we want, otherwise the filling sort of falls out. And as you can see, it's the consistency of hummus, which is the effect that we wanted. We don't want it too runny, because otherwise it will make our pastry a little soggy, and that's the last thing that we need. Oh, this looks like a nice big portion for a man. What's lovely about this is vegetarian, but if you do want to make it non-vegetarian, you can always put in a little bit of bacon or some ham. You don't want any meat that's too strong in flavor, because it will overpower it. It does seem to have, or tend to have, a slightly gentler taste, and that's exactly what we're wanting to achieve. I'm just going to clean off my fingers, excuse me. There we go. Here I am. Give our salsa verde a little bit of a stir. I didn't make this one too runny, as you can see, because again, I didn't want to make the pastry too wet. So we're just going to give a gentle smear of this. And as you can see, we've got some lovely contrasts going here. There we go. Doesn't matter if they mix into each other, it all adds extra flavor, and it does look rather pretty, I think. So it's really just 1 tablespoon per tartlet. We did do a little bit more of the puree, and white beans are actually a lovely bean to work with, because they can take on so many different flavors, and they do puree really nicely. So you'll see, if you go to my books, any of my all sorts books, you'll notice that I have used beans before, just because of that. And you can find some lovely recipes there too. So now all we're going to do is we're going to top it off with a slice of tomato. If it's big enough, we can put another, oops, that one just landed there. That one wants to live there then. I've already dressed it, I've salt and peppered it, I've seasoned it. I'm going to put these sort of at an end, and all I'm going to do now is just chop 1 or 2 in half, so that we can actually fill it up better. Just like that. There we go. And again, we've got some lovely colors going on here. You've got the vibrancy of the salsa verde contrasting beautifully with the puff pastry. There we go. Almost done. This one looks like it needs a little bit more. That one seems to be fine. And now all that's left is to pop it under the grill. Put it under the grill for about 1 minute or 2. You know your ovens, you know what works best. But all we're trying to achieve is a little bit of goldenness on our puff pastry, and a little bit of the tomatoes starting to soften. We don't want it too mushy, but we don't want it so hard as it is now. We also just want to heat up the tomato. This dish is also great if you serve it at room temperature. Do you think I could get that word out? Room temperature. Otherwise, it's also delicious warm. So let's pop it in. Goes under the grill, and we give it 1 minute or 2 or a couple of minutes. So I've taken out the puff pastry tartlets. You've got to watch them because they can burn quite quickly. So we have them over here, and all I'm going to do is I'm actually going to present them on a lovely board. I've got some fresh lavender that I've picked from the garden, a few little colored leaves, which just add another sort of bit of texture to it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to serve this up onto a board, which we can then take out and serve to everybody. There we go. As you can see, they're still nice and warm, and you can see that the tomatoes have softened, but not too much. Oops, we don't want to lose those to the floor. There we go. Oh, and I can smell the basil coming through. I wish you could experience the smell. Can't wait for TVs and programs like that. Can you imagine what it's going to do to cooking shows? Oops. Probably a spatula might have been the better thing, but anyway, there we go. And last but not least, one more. And you've got yourself a lovely vegetarian meal to serve. Let's get this out the way. There we go. Can you have a squiz at that? There we go. Our lovely bean puree with tomato tartlets.